So let's get started with the reading. This first poem is very much on the mental health spectrum. And it's actually one I wrote. It's the earliest poem of the ones I'm putting together for a book, maybe. It's the earliest one. I wrote it when I was 16, and it was the first time that I ever had a poem just come to me fully formed. And it was just like, I remember I wrote it and I came out and read it to my mom, and she was like, "Did you just go in there and write that?" And so it's a happy memory. Clearance, everything must go. He's got no soul, he's got no heart, and he's got no place to start. He only had one heart for sale. He's got no air, he's got no breath, he's got nothing of nothing left. And there's nothing in him that's available. He's failable. He lost his heart, forgot his mind, spilt his skin and all within, and now he's left to moan. Got nothing of his own. Forgot to dance, forgot to sing, forgot to do most anything. And now he wraps his fists around the bars and wails. He's pretty sure he's failed. But still they remind him to do harder, faster, better. But he can only sell so much, and he has sold it all. Nothing left to believe in, nothing left to redeem for 5 cents with the soda cans and 2-liter bottles. He's failable. They never guessed it. They always thought if they just pushed a little harder, faster, better, he'd excel. Oh well. Now he's an empty shell, and at least he did his best. Pulled his heart out of his chest and offered it onto the block for auction when it was all that he had left, so that he could do it harder, faster, better. Except he never could. They say he never would. And he's heard it so often that he mumbles it at night. If only I had done more. If only I had tried harder, faster, better. If only. Then I would have done well. Then I would have done well, and they would stop pushing, and I would be able to rest. If only. And he'd sell it if he had it, but there's nothing left to sell. Okay, tonight I'm reading a lot of poems about elders. So this first one is about my grandparents on my dad's side. Mostly about my grandma, but there's a bit of grandpa in there too. It's called Drowning the Puppies, which was, I looked up with Fernando, different words for washing feet, and we looked up feet, because washing her feet doesn't sound very poetic. So we looked up different words for feet, and one of them was puppies. And I was like, oh man, this has to happen. Drowning the Puppies, a poem in 4 parts. 1. She never touched her feet. They were necessary tools for picking in the cotton fields, delivering mail, and maintaining a spotless household, all of which she did without help or complaint. As my grandfather's early onset Parkinson's stole his ability to do much, but beat the boys and torment his wife. 2. The only time I ever asked Sherman for anything, Grandma told me, was a month before Larry was born. I was round with him, and I asked Sherman to help me on with my shoes. He said, "Next you're going to ask me to wash your feet." I never asked him for anything again. 3. About a year before she passed, long after Grandpa hit the ground, I started washing, massaging, and pumicing her hands and feet before painting her nails. And while I worked, sitting at her feet, she'd tell me old, hand-me-down stories about her life as it had been when she was younger. She'd call me honey child, and I'd drink it in, always taking. 4. I should have come more often, but I came as was convenient to me, to that old hole in the wall where they'd packed her away, like I too had done, to take out and feel proud about at our leisure. After I've left, she'll show the other occupants her sparkling nails, long after they've started to chip, as proof that someone loves her. 2 hours, 1 day, every other week. Okay, so a little while ago, there was the white light reading, and I'm going to read my aphrastic poem from that about El Señor John White. It's called An Artist-Shaped Hole. March 24th is fading behind a permanent white. You've spent so many years with passing clouds where memory was migratory. There's an artist-shaped hole 4 inches above your name, and you're less than a quarter of the green. The circle is almost closing on a picture of you when you had hair. But the part of the painting that makes me cry isn't the 3 onions in the corner, sliced or unsliced, but the disassembled garden to the left, complete with loyal companion. Was he buried in that garden? Is that why the flowers sleep around the edges? But the 24th of March is faded now, dressed like a virgin or a memory. And the numbers and the numbers and the numbers do not drive this piece of art named John, but be speculate, as though trying to get a word in edgewise. They do not know how to scream like the fish do. Fish free and wild in the ocean. Fish plated up with a smile. One being held by its guts just for show, as it dangles with a nakedness that I wouldn't wish on anyone's daughter. But they stand up for John White, as living things ought to do, their fishy noses angled toward that artist-shaped hole, as though trying to announce it voicelessly. Young John raises an eyebrow and whispers, "Where are you now?" But the man-shaped hole just listens. I wonder if this is what it will be like when you are gone. So this next poem is based on something I heard at a poetry reading as everybody was kind of getting settled. There were 2 old men, like maybe late 80s, early 90s, that were sitting together in the back, and they never read. They just sat there the whole time. And I'd been to that reading maybe 3 times, and they'd always done the same thing. So being a good little poet, I was eavesdropping. And I mixed a little bit of my granddad in here too, because I can. It's called Boom. I die 100 times a night, he says, still caught in the nightmare of the damnedest war he can imagine, the bloodletting of World War II. Buried in a foxhole with a live grenade that exploding saw him home, guilty to be alive. Now closed spaces smell like roots, earthworms, and clay. Now shaking hands remind him that he'll never be the same. The nightmares shatter down on him like morning haze, speckling spectacles, smudging ashes down his cheeks like tears. The faces of death and the faces of brothers, and the nameless faces of those he killed, voiceless, speaking to him now through the void of sleep and hallucination. And the breathing comes and goes, but mostly it lingers, clutched tight to his chest, wrangled with both hands, in the violent days when he ached for silence, in those late nights when, a wounded animal, he wished for death. And the breathing comes and goes, but mostly it hangs, and he sips at it like she told him to, with tiny little inhales, with pursed lips, chapped and hungry. And the breath comes and goes, but his fingers don't turn blue, and that's how she said he'd know if he wasn't getting oxygen. But the nights swell cold and long, and his body, swollen, clomps on past dawn. I die 100 times a night, he says again. And his friend squeezes his shoulder, not knowing exactly how he feels, but feeling for him just the same. And it's a moment of understanding, but the words still remain. I die 100 times a night. I die 100 times a night. I die 100 times a night. Boom. Okay, so for a while there, I was teaching for California poets in the schools, and one of the exercises that I had the kids do was I took a bunch of first lines and last lines and put them in a paper bag, and the kids had to select two, and the idea was to start with one and end with the other and create a connection. And so I had to do one so I could show them what they're supposed to do. And here it is. So it's called Light, and it starts with the Fatima Ashgar line, each morning I stitch a scowl over my smile. And ends with the Emily Dickinson line, you may forget the warmth he gave, I will forget his light. Light. Each morning I stitch a scowl over my smile. Let's try that again. Each morning I stitch a scowl over my smile. I dress myself in ashes and don't mascara my lashes because I know the time for death has come. Each morning I remember his hands as they whittled or scooped out the guts of his grapefruit. I remember how their calluses rested gentle on my cheek while he looked down at me with a smile. Because memories are all that are left to me these days. Remembrance of his twinkle, his laugh, his skilled woodcraft. I remember him. Because memories are all that are left to me, I don't cling to the hem of his checked cotton shirts. I don't laugh at his jokes or blush at his teasing. Those were the gifts of childhood. But when I saw his coffin, that was lost to me. I'd never felt so grown up as looking down into his strange, vacant face and trying not to reach out or cry to what wasn't no longer there. His light has gone out and left behind dim memory and left behind hearts begging and open hands. You may remember the warmth he gave, but I will remember his light. So I've been helping take care of a friend, and these two poems next are kind of conjoined. One happened one day, and the second one happened the very next day. Okay. The quiet place. When I go to the quiet place, there you are, looking up at me from your chair and talking about not waking up. When I go to the quiet place, the place where words reside, I hear you promising that wherever you're going, you'll miss me there too. And it's so fragile, like tears that jitter out down my cheeks. But I can't help telling you, you go when you're ready. Don't let me or anyone else guilt you into staying. In the meantime, I bring you dates to supplement the chocolate, flowers to supplement the paint, movies that will take you on a ride and lend themselves to laughter, until I have to exchange you for that empty space on the canvas as you travel to wherever you're going. Wherever I am, I'll miss you too. The next day, honest to God, a good day. Today was a good day. Lots of cards and introspection, you admiring my tarot and talking about making yourself a set. Even though it's a long-term project, even though yesterday you seemed so ready to float off into the ether. Today the cards say no, and I can see that you believe them. I've always believed in you when you get that determined gleam in your eye. Today is a good day, a day of hope. We laugh and talk about empresses, hermits, and the Ace of Swords. They all reach out into your future. They preach about growth and rebirth, a butterfly's wings stretched over the skeleton's hip bones. And there's too much change and life in the cards, so you joke they must have got the wrong man at first. But as they repeat themselves in their Hugesian way, as you marvel at their beauty, you start to feel connected to something that cannot be seen. Your chest puffs out a little as you chortle, as you say, "I love this. This feels so good." That undertone in your eye, like you're staring into the distance to a place where your future self is standing. I've missed that lately. Feared you'd lost that yesterday in your resignation. But life has another hand or two for you. Talk of new adventure and reaching into the unknown. It doesn't feel like death, except in the sense of tarot's rebirth. It's far too full of joy to be an ending. After I left today, my own chest was puffed out a little, inflated with hope that black will remain an accent color in my wardrobe for a little while longer. Long enough, I dare dream, that I'll forget writing this today. Okay, this one, again, White Light. I went to the Poets Talk for White Light, and John and Paul were there talking about their pieces. And at one point, Paul said something that I had to write a poem about. So this is for Paul. The quote is, "It's not a choice, it's an opportunity." The act of creation, he says, is not a choice, but an opportunity. He says this half crumpled from the floor where he explores his passion. There are all these possibilities, and some of us can see them, he says. It's our duty to expose them, to allow people to look and see and know. And so it is in my corner of the work. It purrs to me of possibility if I chase that rabbit, if I step through that passageway. And then the work becomes so obvious, basic transcription, it's so plain. And then the work crawls toward me like Paul Lindhard, gesturing and contorting to express its meaning. When I'm adrift, it's because I'm blinded, like a flip being switched, like stepping into the monkey house. It's because I've forgotten that my eyes have two pairs of lids. And so it is when I say I love you, not mechanical or rote, but neither a choice that I'm making. You exist inside me, like time or breath. You are not a choice that I'm making, but an opportunity that I'm always elated to catch with a butterfly net. And so it is when I say I love you that I am a rocket through space, and you're that distant meteor somewhere outside Pluto that Paul brought to life in a rock so pretty, it's hard to call it rock. And I can see you, and I can wish on you, despite the fact that you're not a star. And your gravity pulls me closer and closer to that possibility that maybe you do shine of your own volition. And if not, maybe we'll still end up molded together, welded by something more basic than heat or cool, more basic than gravity. But just the God that holds the world together. For you and I have always been made of it, attracted by it, stuck on one another from perhaps the first breath. Because you and I have always been made of it, I do not run from it, but fuse into your side, pulling you closer than a sister, than a mother, than a partner, collapsing into you as you fall into me, until our parts are blended and we wonder at the power of love. This is the last piece. So thank you guys so much. You have no idea. Yeah. I don't think you guys know. I love you guys. Claiming what cannot be owned. Pounding out primal beats, I'm thrown back to when humans walked among the stars. When children crested on their backs just to push their chests a little closer to the infinite. I remember when I first saw the Milky Way, its consuming sweep across the sky. I couldn't try to name it, 8 years old at camp. I couldn't imagine anything in the presence of the eternal. 10 years later, in the arms of a boy who thought himself a man, we shivered on that stale beach and drew constellations of our own. I tried to remember one or two of the classics, the ones I'd been taught over time, but we were fond of the pizza constellation and the Spuds MacKenzie dog. In college, I failed astronomy twice. High on poetry, starved on science. And there they were with their sky charts, dictating names of the stars and their rotation in the sky. I learned that stars move 12 degrees an hour, much to my dismay. For such things should be left to the poets, not scientific classification. Such things should be approached with the whispered, wow, of a child, rather than dissected, thought to be understood and named. We cannot claim the infinite, though many humans try, and that perhaps yields a sense of power in the face of our inevitable powerlessness. Meanwhile, the little girl at camp just stares and prays never to know the death of wonder. Thanks, guys.